And Pierce, that was a very good discussion a while ago about the role of the church that has shifted from a role of prominence and influence to a role that is now closer to the margins but closer to the poor. But for some time, Ireland was going up and becoming one of the bright players in the EU, and the Irish currency was going up in value, and now you're also hit by the financial meltdown.
We are very much so, and that seems to have come as a great surprise to many Irish people. It came as a surprise to me, but I just wasn't following the economic trends maybe as closely as I should have. But in the last few months, maybe only in the last year, Ireland has suddenly changed from being what was known as the Celtic Tiger. Mm-hmm. And the Celtic Tiger was kind of a synonym for a country that became prosperous very quickly, in a material sense. And it has changed from that now to becoming the poor man of Europe. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we are in the EU, and our currency is the same as that of all the other countries that are in the EU body. Mm-hmm. Most countries in the EU have adopted a general currency known as the euro, with the exception of Britain, Denmark, and I think Sweden. But we are in serious economic difficulties. Now, of course, that's part of a global trend. Mm. But it is extraordinary that our money has suddenly become so devalued, and the result of all that is that now in Ireland there are major social problems about employment. Mm-hmm. Up to last year, Ireland was a net importer of people. Mm-hmm. Many immigrants were coming from, particularly from Eastern Europe, places like Poland and Latvia and Lithuania, and also from Africa. Mm-hmm. And there was no problem for these people to get jobs. Now all that has dried up quite suddenly, and now we have the spectre of unemployment once again, as we had in Ireland in the 1980s and way back in the 1950s, mm-hmm. Those times particularly. In Ireland today, I think about 300 people are losing their jobs per day. And of course that is going to give rise to huge social problems in the country. So yes, things have changed dramatically, and indeed changed for the worse in Ireland in very recent times.
Do you think the democratic systems in Ireland are in place to prevent massive unrest and massive conflict between the haves and the have-nots? Because in the Philippines, it's always been like this, and for some strange reason, the unrest has become normal. But it never really escalates into something very big that that topples down a government. But in Ireland, could you say that even this financial meltdown would not be able to shake the Irish democratic system because it's in place?
It depends to a very large extent on what steps the present government takes right now to stem this problem, to prevent this problem. Because, for example, in recent months there has been quite an amount of civil unrest in Greece, which is a country of similar size to Ireland. Okay, it's a bit bigger, the population is a bit bigger, but in many ways it's similar. And Ireland is being compared with Greece from an economic point of view. So it's going to depend largely on the steps taken by the government to cushion the problems for people, particularly those who have recently been unemployed. Because there are a number of identifiable problems. First of all, many people are losing their jobs. That has the effect of making their mortgages very shaky. Many people in Ireland have mortgages. They are very much in debt. Many people have bought large, expensive cars that they can no longer afford. And there is a tendency now for houses to be repossessed, cars to be repossessed, and so on. So unless the government takes steps to cushion these blows and to revitalise the economy, to enable people to pay their debts and also to buy things, because the problem now is people are buying far fewer things than they used to, and that's very obvious in the area of large consumer goods like cars and of course property, houses also. So something will have to be done urgently by the Irish government to prevent this. Now, as I said before, we are fortunate in Ireland in that we belong to the EU, so that we have a Europe-wide insulation against major financial problems.
But at least, Piers, you can say that unlike third world countries who are really also badly hit by the financial crisis, being part of the EU and also being somehow, you still have some reserves, no?
We do. Yeah, we do, yeah. And I suppose the very fact that we are, to some extent, a democratic country is a help in that if we are not happy with our elected leaders, well, then we can fire them out. And at present, many people are not particularly happy with the current Irish government. Now, whether the opposition in Ireland could do any better is another question.
So, democracy and economic crisis really would complement each other, no?
Well, very much so. And I suppose, really, if the country had been more democratic, if there were better systems of answerability and accountability, this crisis would not be as bad as it is, because it has arisen certainly in part because of the cosy relationship in Ireland between the government, building speculators, big corporations, and the banks. And the lack of accountability on the part of these organisations is certainly one of the contributory factors in this economic meltdown, as you call it.
And there is where a very strong rule of law that controls corporations and government spending and banks that are giving big favors to either politicians, government functionaries, and corporate presidents. This is where it could have averted the present meltdown. They're talking about the same thing in the United States and everywhere else.
That's right, yeah.
Where you have like this guy who owes $50 billion, no? This guy, what was his name? And he's just been given a house arrest in America.
Yeah,
and
exactly. Well, we have similar people in Ireland. I dare not mention any names, but certainly there are the equivalent of that kind of person at home in Ireland.
No real punishment.
There's no real punishment, and then what I suppose really causes problems for the ordinary citizen is that if the ordinary citizen is found guilty of minor crimes and misdemeanours,
they go to jail.
Then they go to jail. The full weight of the law is brought to bear on them, and they see these extraordinarily wealthy millionaires and billionaires being able to get away with appalling crimes and without any sanctions.
With that, I think the rule of law is necessary to control and regulate greed. No,
absolutely. Yeah.
So thank you, Piers.
Thank you.